the medical world when he was appointed as a professor of alternative medicine, but then he fell out badly with former supporters. Now, in Why I Changed My Mind, Dominic Lawson talks to him to find out what happened.
Professor Edzard Ernst founded the first British university department dedicated to complementary medicine, having begun his career at a homeopathic hospital in his native Germany. Yet he is now hated by practitioners of so-called alternative medicine, after he declared that the vast majority of their methods were useless and even dangerous. And his most significant opponent was the office of the Prince of Wales, which attempted to get him sacked. So, Professor Ernst, did the Prince of Wales office succeed in getting you sacked?
In a way, yes, because after the complaint, I had 13 months of investigation, which was very, very unpleasant because they treated me guilty until proven innocent. And after that, I was proven innocent, but all support broke down. Contracts weren't prolonged, money dried up, and I had to go into early retirement, and the department went out of existence.
Can we go back to the beginning? And I want to ask you, how and why did you become professionally involved in homeopathy and other so-called alternative treatments?
For me, growing up in Germany, homeopathy was just medicine. We had a homeopath as a family doctor, and it was just normal. And then, by coincidence, my very, very first job as a junior doctor was in a homeopathic hospital. And I admit I was quite impressed with homeopathy for a while.
So when you were a child, I mean, the whole family were treated homeopathically?
Yes, but the homeopath was a physician. He was a doctor, so whenever somebody was seriously ill, he had serious medicine.
When you went into this, were you convinced at the time that you were helping your patients with homeopathic remedies?
I got the impression that patients did get better, and I did interpret it in that sense, namely that the homeopathic remedies that I was prescribing were helping patients. I was very uncritical. I didn't consider all the other possibilities.
Can you give any precise detail of what was involved when you were prescribing homeopathic remedies, how it actually worked, how you thought it was working?
The short answer to that is no. Nobody knows how it works. And my professor in pharmacology, as a medical student, had told us in no uncertain terms that this was charlatanry and quackery, and that nothing was actually active in these pills, no active principle whatsoever. So it was puzzling. And the question, why did something work that couldn't possibly work, was actually the question that fascinated me and prompted me to go on and research the area.
Is this what made you leave Germany, the home of homeopathy? It was invented by a German, and set up a chair of complementary medicine at Exeter University?
No, I was appointed head of a very large department in Vienna, so I changed country for the first time by going to Vienna, and for a number of reasons which have nothing to do at all with homeopathy or alternative medicine, Vienna didn't please me, full of intrigues, and so I was pleased to see in the New Scientist an advertisement for post in Exeter. I went to my atlas and looked up where Exeter is, and thought I apply, and eventually got the post.
And when and why did you decide that these practices, because obviously you were looking at other practices, not just homeopathy, were useless or even delusional?
As a scientist, you're always led by the evidence, and I certainly was led by the evidence. So initially I thought maybe there's something in it, maybe there's things to discover in homeopathy or other fields of alternative medicine. And as we did science more and more and summarized the science from across the world, it became clearer and clearer that homeopathic pills are pure placebos. Today, this is very, very clear to everybody except to some homeopaths.
How difficult did you find it to change your mind?
In a way, I had to give up a childhood dream, because homeopathy had apparently worked on my patients. It had worked on me when I was a child. So it wasn't all that easy to give up your own biases, to put it scientifically. But eventually, as a scientist, you just don't have a choice. You could, of course, lie, and lots of people do in homeopathy, but that's not my game.
When you say they lie, can you expand on that a bit?
Of course, lying is a strong term. They delude themselves into thinking something which is not true. And they do that because they see and treat homeopathy not as a form of healthcare, but as a religion.
But do they have the faith themselves?
Yes, by and large.
But in which case they're not lying, are they?
They're deluded. That's what I said. That lying is a bit of a strong word.
Yes. And what was the reaction of these practitioners when you began to produce peer-reviewed papers, in a sense, pointing this out? How did they react?
The paper trail is not as abrupt as you depicted. My conclusions became more critical and then more and more outspoken, and then with all the flack that I got, even more outspoken. So it was a long process over 2 decades. And people reacted by first smiling, then grinning sarcastically, and then declaring that they're no longer my friends.
So you lost friends?
Oh yes, plenty.
How did you feel about that?
Disappointed, sometimes a bit more than disappointed. Losing friends is not very funny, but you have to weigh the risk and the benefit. And the benefit is to stay truthful to yourself, to be honest.
I gather that one of your first critics was the Queen's own homeopathic doctor, Peter Fisher. Is that right?
He certainly is one of my critics, yeah.
And as we mentioned at the beginning, the Prince of Wales, or at least his office, came to the defence of homeopathy. Why do you think it has such a grip on the royal family?
That's very difficult to answer. I know that homeopathy has a long tradition of appealing to aristocrats, and the affiliation of homeopathy to royal houses is not just from this generation. It goes back to the early days of homeopathy. But the royal family, we all know that when they're seriously ill, they don't go to a homeopath. If not, they wouldn't get very old.
How much abuse have you actually received?
I receive abuse almost on a daily basis from all over the world. I'm writing a blog where everybody can insult me happily. I get hate mail. And at one stage, we had the police in my department because my secretaries felt they needed to learn how to identify letter bombs. And a co-worker of mine received death threats when we published a study on homeopathic arnica and the fact that it didn't work.
You say you do a blog. Are you now deliberately provocative in your approach to supporters of homeopathy and alternative medicine?
Yes, I've grown to have quite a bit of fun out of all this, and I provoke people. I like to provoke people, and I think it's necessary to provoke people in order to stimulate some thinking and to have any hope at all to change somebody's mind.
Do you think you have changed people's minds?
Plenty of people, yes. The majority of the population is somewhere in between the hardline skeptics and the true believers. And these people I like to address, and I think I can change their mind.
But why do you think there are so many trained and qualified doctors who believe and practice homeopathy if it were completely useless?
Because they don't think scientifically, they don't think critically. And in medical school, we don't learn how to think critically. We have to learn so many details, so many facts that we can barely keep up with them. And there's no time to think critically, which is a great shame.
But in your ideal world, Edzard, would they all be struck off?
In my ideal world, they would all need to change their views, do some science, and see the facts as they are. And if somebody then even resists to think for himself or herself, I wouldn't struck them off, but I would teach them.
You spoke earlier about the placebo effect, and
Yes.
clearly this is a hugely powerful effect, medically attested. So your view, I guess, would be to the extent that homeopathy seemed to have positive results, it was only and entirely because of the placebo effect. But is there actually anything wrong with doctors using the placebo effect?
It's more complicated than that. There are other phenomena involved in addition to the placebo effect. The most powerful one is probably the fact that people get better anyway, the natural history of the disease. If I treat a common cold homeopathically, it will last a week. If I don't treat it at all, it lasts 7 days. And that's the natural history of the disease. So there are plenty of other factors. But the question, can we justify homeopathy or any other quackery through the fact that it helps via these non-specific effects, as they're called? The answer is no, because if I give just a placebo, I'm cheating these patients out of the specific effect of an effective treatment.
Can I go back briefly to the battle you had with the Prince of Wales or his office? Could you just give a very brief outline of what the battle was over?
The Prince of Wales commissioned a report from an economist which was designed to go straight into the hands of health politicians. So it wasn't going to be...
The Ministry of Health.
Yeah, it wasn't going to be peer-reviewed or anything like that. They involved me, and I was sworn to confidentiality, and the report was not just rubbish, the report was dangerous. I disagreed with just about everything from this report and therefore asked my name to be erased from it. But I still had this dilemma what to do about it, how to warn the public about it, etc., etc. So the Times phoned me and asked me about this report, and I said I can't tell you anything about it because of confidentiality, and he said you don't need to because it's in front of me. And then I told him what I thought about the methodology, and that was seen as a breach of confidence, and that caused the fuss.
Clearly all this caused you a great deal of pain. As you say, the backing for your chair dried up. You spent over a year under investigation. Do you sometimes wish you had never got involved in all this?
Of course, if I could have avoided it, I would have avoided it, but it was unavoidable. As an ethical scientist, I had to do something about it, so I didn't have the choice. I couldn't avoid it, but if it hadn't happened, I would be a happier man.
What do you think your young self, the young man in Germany who's believed in homeopathy, who wanted to be a homeopath, whose family came from that background, what would he think of you now and what you've gone through?
I think I would be quite pleased with myself because I believe that changing one's mind is a sign of intelligence. If people don't change their minds, there will be no progress, and progress is what I stand for.
Professor Ernst, thank you very much.